So this will be the third part of the Israeliana project. The zombies are, as usual, doing the zombie stuff. But you know, zombies will be zombies, as they say. Zombies gonna zombie. I will discuss triggers now, as I promised. And as I've said, this will be more speculative than before, because naturally, I mean, the obvious stuff were the things that, I mean, just, jumped to my face, as they say. And now we are left with things that are either less imminent in my thought, or are a little bit speculative. And these are kind of like, I mean, separated to two categories. The category of the, I would say, presumably random or meaningless stuff, and the things that are related to behavioral issues that are required from the Titans. Now, it should be said that my kind of understanding is that even the random stuff are not really random, and you can learn things even from the random stuff. And I tried to explain it in the previous two chapters. And mostly, I mean, it's obvious that all the presumably random stuff is related to, is very old. And it's the same thing, like, I mean, for many decades. Many decades. Even like Kofiko or, Chipopo, that are relatively new. I mean, only 50 years old, which is not new at all. But it should be said that before that, I mean, the concept of a person in a monkey suit is not did not start with Kofiko. Kofiko might be just a relatively new, I mean, new from the perspective of people that do not change at all, and they're just repeating the same things again and again. But there were people in monkey suits before Kofiko, like King Kong, and things like that. And obviously this was a trigger, I mean, from the get-go, I mean, from the 1920s or something like that. And in general, the triggers are, it's easy to see that they are mostly everyday item. You see the zombies, they like to hear their own voices, but I mean, that's the way zombies are. It was probably, the triggers are probably things that were common household items during, I mean, you can imagine the environments, in the kibbutz and the moshavim, like the little towns, the communal towns in Israel during the 1920s, 1930s, or even the cities. And they weren't, I mean, they didn't have like much, they didn't have this, it wasn't a wealthy society, like relatively that Israel of since the 1990s, and of course up until today including. So obviously, I mean, the triggers were just common items from daily life. And it stayed that way. It mostly stayed that way. I cannot think of anything new that from the whole realm of the triggers that did not exist, at least in some way, during the 1920s, even in Israel. And I should also remind you the category of showing superiority, which is the most artistic of all, because it doesn't really, I mean, it not necessarily build on a specific object or a name or color, but mostly behaviors that are, just, I mean, speaking loudly or threatening you, or, I mean, jumping to your face and, like, I mean, surprising you in all sorts of, like, I mean, occasions. Like, just, I mean, by showing, I mean, showing the presence. I mean, the presence was always important in the subjugation of the Titans. Like being there, with all them, And that's why I mean they like so much like to be naked. I mean it's like to reveal their body, you know, because presumably I mean the naked body of the ape accompanied with voice and you know and all sorts of like I mean violent gestures that many times escalate to actual violence. I mean it's not that like real violence is out of the question, but if we kind of like limit ourselves to presumably the hypnotic triggers, which are presumably a subtle way of subjugation, even though I don't know what's subtle about it, it's not subtle at all. But you do understand that, like according to at least the idea, like the paradigm, it is supposed to be something that is invisible. That's I mean the main idea. As I've said in the past, it's like you know the way that they do it. I spoke about when I spoke about the Soviet method. That I mean, the Israeli interpretation of the Soviet method is, you mentioned restaurants today. I mean, many times I compared it like to the way that I mean that you receive puree. You know what's puree? I don't know, like mashed potatoes, but I know in very fancy restaurants. So famously, I mean, when you go to a Michelin star restaurant, I mean, I've never been in a Michelin star. It just, I mean, I read about it. I never went to any kind of, I mean, very fancy restaurant in my life, but it's, I mean, even if it's not true, I mean, just you know, for the metaphor, that's, I mean, that a puree in a fancy restaurant is served like 50% butter. There are only 50% potatoes or milk or whatever, but I mean, 50% butter and of course salt. So, in a way, that's how the Israelis interpreted the Soviet method. I mean, just from the get-go. That I mean, it should also. I mean, that the hypnotic triggers are always served with 50% butter, and the butter is violence. And it doesn't really make much sense. I mean, from the point of view of like you know the strict you know, presumably Soviet psychology, hypnotic. Presumably scientific perspective, but that's the way it was always interpreted in Israel. That I mean, it should be served with violence, and it's still like that. That's why one of the main reasons why it's not that obvious, even for a person that is like I consider myself, you know, very perceptive and like I always like to watch, you know, how people behave, even if I do not look like I watch, you know, but you know. Even if you look disinterested, I mean, you do watch. I mean, and I always watch. And Irene, you know, the Awaken, it's kind of like another kind of celestial creatures. The Irene. It's not from the Bible, but it's from the I think Book of Enoch, which is apocryphal book, which is very one of the most prominent of the apocryphal books. Is the Book of Enoch. Sefer Hanoch. Actually, some people think that during the time of the Mishnah, I mean, it was considered part of the Bible, famously because of the, you know, the Mishnah is it Braita? I don't remember. There was they considered Rabbi Akiva and like I mean, and how actually, I mean, different kind of books, presumably before the Bible was codified. How different books affect, like I mean, the people that actually even touch like the scrolls. So the book of Enoch, I mean, is listed among those that I mean, you know, related to Tumat Yadayim, as they, I mean, which is a concept that related to holy books, holy scripture. So, I mean, yes. So Sefer Hanoch, Book of Enoch, yes. So you have the Irene, the Awaken. So. I'm one of those awakened, like always awake. I mean, also because you know, besides the mythological references, I mean, you know, that I'm tortured in my sleep, because that's where I mean, mostly, I mean, they use the subliminal, I mean, conditioning on you and other kind of like electromagnetic shock waves that pretty much, I mean, deprive you of your sleep constantly. That's why I mean, throughout many years, I mean, the last 15 years. I mean, I always had, you know, the gray circles around my eyes, and I still have it, even though to lesser extent. Apropos, you know, honest Asian Annotations, you know. So I remember that I doing like a trip in, I think it was in Cambodia. Even though I didn't spend much time in Cambodia, mostly in when I had when I tripped like when I traveled Southeast Asia, it was mostly Laos. But I think that particular occurrence happened in Cambodia. Kind of like I walked the streets of Cambodia and and then and like when I walked, there were two, two like young ladies that looked at me and like pointed at me and like left and left really left at me and and spoke to jiggle to each other, and like it was very kind of like peculiar. So I took the liberty to actually confront them and ask them, what's so funny? Like why do you you point at me and jiggle? Just two young ladies in the street. At the street. So one of them told me, kind of like, it was very funny because it was so kind of like not one of the things that happened to you many times. So remember it. That she told me, she told me, you look great. Like, your face is fine, but there is something about you that is like very bad, which is your eyes. You have these gray things, surround your eyes, and like so, and this is it's really not. It doesn't look good at all. So just so you know. So yeah, so now I know, as they say. So now I know. So thanks for the tip. It's funny when people are very honest, strangers are very honest with you, so you remember it because, mostly they don't, and you don't expect them to be, but, so yeah, the gray circles are always there, today much less than before, actually, but, there was always gray circles because I never sleep, because of the torture of that I'm subjected to during the sleep. So I'm one of the awakens. So you watch people, but sometimes it's difficult to really understand if what you actually see is like supposedly a hypnotic trigger or subliminal implanted trigger, because it always, in Israel, the way that they use it, they actually use triggers, is always accompanied with violence. It's always, something that is terrifying and violent. And I'm sure that it wasn't like, the original thought of the Soviets, but maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Just, it's so unscientific, so much butter with the mashed potatoes. So that's why it's kind of like, sometimes it's not obvious, like, to discriminate between the hypnotic triggers and just, violent behavior and behavior that's supposed to show psychological superiority. But certainly in Israel, it was always integral part of the deal that they supposedly show psychological superiority by acting like apes, very certain apes, and they like to expose their bodies, to the great extent in which it presumably might be considered something that is within the boundaries of, cultural norms, even though it's not. Actually, more than once in this hostel, I told a person, of the many hats, the glorified American hats, that this is like a criminal offense, that they cannot, address before me, and, because for a long time it was standard, underwear, I never entered anyone's room in my life, but just, in the kitchen, in the pub, you cannot avoid, go to the kitchen or to the toilets, a person, you want to eat something, and underwear is like the maximum kind of uniform that they pose in, so I more than once I've told that person here, this is like a criminal offense. You cannot, you cannot, showing, undressing almost completely before a person is a criminal offense. And I think in both times they just faked, that they don't, they don't understand what I say. Like maybe, like presumably they don't speak Hebrew well enough. But of course, it was a lie. Anyway, I mean, just to understand, sexual transgression is integral part of this Titan subjugation. It was always like that. Because according to the thought, it's a way to show you, I mean, maybe it will elicit homosexual urgency within you because you know that, I mean, they always want you to be homosexual. It's, you know, the second most important objective of any intelligence cell of the Shabak since forever was, even without relation to the Titan subjugation, was to convert people to homosexuality. This is especially prominent when they deal with the Son of God because, I mean, presumably it's so great, I mean, if they can prove that the Son of God is homosexual, presumably. Like I mean, the first objective is, of course, that you will be hospitalized in mental institution, become insane, and then they will be able to just, I mean, without any kind of protection from the law, just, I mean, do whatever they want you, because when you are hospitalized in mental institution, no one can help you. I mean, especially if it's in arrest conditions. Like I was actually arrested like 16 days in such a place, Nitzan Madan. It's like a rest house, which is also mental asylum, like Arkham Asylum. I've already told you, it's like Arkham Asylum, but I mean, you don't really see jokers and riddlers over there. You just see either sleep people that are asleep or sleepy people that are, I mean, moonwalking, you know, because they are treated with so much medicine that they are just, I mean, sleepy people all the time. So I mean, that's what they want. I mean, their targets, I mean, especially me, like to be like a person that just, I mean, sleep all the time, so they can take like his bodily fluids from him without any kind of like protection from the law. That was always the main objective, and still the main objective. But the secondary objective, which is also very important, is to convert you to homosexuality or to prove that you're homosexual. So part of it is probably related to why they like to be undressed in front of you, and, you know, all the time. To an extent that, I mean, more than once I actually confronted the person here in this hostel and told them this is a criminal offense. I'll call the police. I mean, you cannot do it. It's against the law. So they fake kind of like, I mean, you know, we don't understand. I mean, עברית שפה קשה, קשה שפה, you know, עברית קשה שפה. So yes, just to say that it is difficult to actually, sometimes it's not that obvious like what are triggers, even though they do these things all the time, every time, again and again, because it's always accompanied with violent and sexually abusive behaviors. But there are some triggers, I mean, that maybe we should discuss. I mean, mostly that are related somehow to the random, presumably the random category. I mean, two very prominent such things are related to, I would say, household, or, I mean, general kind of like, I mean, household house improvement, which are the ladder, sulam, the ladder, and the drill. Now the drill is, I mean, is always show. I mean, they always drilling, I mean, near you, and it might be just, I mean, a universal or almost universal threat that is used by totalitarian intelligence services. I mean, I have reason to believe that it's like, I mean, like, you know, that it's presumably because, I don't know, you know, they will catch you and they put you like in a cell and drill into you or whatever. Even though, I mean, why should they do it? I mean, you are already in a cell. I mean, your entire life is in a cell. I mean, so, I mean, kind of like the threat is not really, I mean, they threat you with something that they always do. I mean, because and I must say that, I mean, since like 2 months ago, they substantially reduced the drilling, because up until that time, I mean, they always drilled, like, I mean, near me, and it was actually, it's prominent in the videos in this channel, like in many videos in this channel. I mean, it was recorded. I mean, up until like 2 months ago, you can always hear a drilling sound, like in the background. It's something that you just, I mean, watch the videos and, I mean, listen to the drilling sound. And I think that, I mean, it's kind of like reduced during the last 2 months, because Probably because my estimation is that when the starships are getting close to Earth, the bicycle mechanism is amplified. I don't want to get into the bicycle mechanism too much now because it's a whole like different category of torture, and it's not related to the hypnotic triggers. It's something to do with the alien technology, I would say, that of course is all presupposed on the bicycle mechanism of the neurons. And this is discussed in other videos, and maybe if there is if you cannot find the videos or you want kind of executive summary, maybe I will hold like another video which is kind of like executive summary. But this was discussed a lot in this channel. Again, not particularly in the lengthy saga that I call the Bicycle 201, because this is mostly historical saga, the 16 chapters. But in many other videos that surrounding this saga, this is something else. It's something else that is also used as torture to both. The way to torture the Titans, but this is also a way for the Titans to actually fight back. And I said many times, there was never a person in the history of the Earth that was more tortured using the bicycle mechanism than I, because for several reasons. They always do it to me, but this goes both ways, because my ability to fight back using the bicycle mechanism is tremendously higher than any person that actually, probably exists in Earth, at least in recent memory. And this, for all of this is predicated on the robots. The fact that I have a tremendous amount of this in my body. It's kind of like a power struggle. It's everybody against you, but you still, even like when everybody is against you, you still, all of them combined, probably have less of these robots in their body than I. So, and it's also a question: can you use? And I must admit that I'm being honest with you. I like honesty. To that day, I'm not sure, like, whether the neurons that are outside my body, but I grow them like in laboratory conditions, can be used for the bicycle, power struggles. They can certainly be used to create symbolic constructions that are used to elicit, effects that are done by the robots, all over the world, and even like in the solar system. And this was shown several times in this channel. But just, as part of the daily power struggles that, the people, I'm not certain, because if it's possible, then presumably, because I have, in the various containers here, in these cabinets, I have tremendous amount of the robots, and huge ones, like spaceships once, and this was documented in more than 100, microscopic examination. By the way, I haven't done a microscopic examination, for some time now, maybe like a week or 2 weeks, and it's very important, to conduct a microscopic examination, just to see that everything is okay with, the various sculptures, the various containers. So maybe I'll conduct some microscopic examination today, and mostly just to see that everything is okay. Similar to the ones that I've conducted like 2 weeks ago, something like that. And also, and also there is another reason why I should conduct a microscopic examination is, to watch, the hideous life form that were created inside the alien container, which is, if you remember, the container that is mostly based on oils and bee waxes. I burned like half of it, like about a week ago, in a kind of like a ceremonial way, if you remember. But still, like about half of it is still intact, and this can be very, very interesting. This one, so it's half, like already half of it was burnt. But what's interesting that once you dig inside of it, you see amazing life forms, like bacteria that can be watched by the naked eye. Something from hell, and I would very much like to actually watch these guys under the microscope, and maybe we'll do it later today or at latest tomorrow, because this is going to be very, very interesting. So I think I will conduct maybe 3 or 4 microscopic examination later today. But again, everything that relates to the neurons, to the robots, is, of course, it's an essential part of the subjugation and the torture But it's another category, and it's not related to, I mean, the presumably, hypnotic theory, which I would like to discuss in this kind of occasion. Regarding ladders, so I mean, with the drill, I mean, I'm not certain if the drill in itself is like a hypnotic trigger, or just, I mean, it's kind of like a clue to you, like a message that is supposedly universal, that, I mean, if you will not give them what they want, they will drill, into you or whatever, or, just maybe sexual, maybe it's got like sexual, implications or sexual association with the drill. You don't need to, it's not that sophisticated. I guess all my listeners, I mean, I can understand like the issue with the drill and how it's related to sexual fantasies. And also to violence fantasies, and that for the Shabak it's almost the same, because these kind of people, they for them, I mean, sex and violence is almost the same thing. Like, I mean, for them, all of them are, they don't really do sex at all, because of they're already punished, so much, specifically with regards to their genitalia and their sexual, libido and things like that. So, I mean, violence and sex is almost the same from their perspective. So maybe this is I mean, major part of the drill issue. And certainly the sound in itself is annoying. And sound terror is the main weapon of the Israelis, as I always say. I mean, sound is 90% of the terror ways, the violent ways is related to sound, whether it's subliminal or not subliminal. But perhaps the drilling, the image of the drill itself is also a trigger. You cannot say, because it's used so often. And it's now used much less than before against me, probably because of the starships, because they hear it. I mean, when they when they use the sound like to terrorize me, they also, I mean, all of them, I mean, all the people that ate the Neros, I mean, they also, I mean, hear this sound. So, I mean, they cannot do it too much. And I think this is related to the fact that the starships are getting close. I mean, they got close to Earth, and now they are very, very close. The ladder is certainly a trigger, and it's an ancient one, like, I mean, 100 years old. And many times it's used specifically on cars, or like, I mean, pickup cars. This is something that you see, I've seen a tremendous amount of time when I still, I mean, I do not drive now. I don't have a car like in my possession. I mean, since, I mean, they almost kill me with, during August, not this August, I mean, 2022. I mean, I was part of like a total loss accident that some a truck just, I mean, tried to kill me, and it was the total loss of the Model 3, the holy car, in which, like, I told you that I've had like many travels in Israel. I mean, even though I had it for only 8 months, but I traveled Israel extensively with this car. And I told you that, I mean, it was all even like part of like several, I mean, bona fide miracles. I'm not sure it will be, I mean, acknowledged as such by the Catholic Church or whoever, like, I mean, that whatever authority that gives credence, to miraculous, I mean, happening. But yeah, I mean, I mean, I never got stuck with the car. Like, I never I never got stuck with like zero battery and with no more like ability to drive. Even though several occasions, like I drove like maybe 15 or 20 minutes, like when the battery was, I mean, nominally zero on the screen. Which of course I kind of like, I thank God for that, and I see it as a miraculous occurrence. Eventually, I always like succeeded in, like, I mean, getting to a place where I can charge the car. But what was very evident to me when I still drove, with the Tesla, or before that with the Peugeot 208 that I had, like, is that, I mean, it's extremely common. Just that I just drive and a pickup truck, or just like, I mean, like a Jeep or something like that, appears with a ladder on top of it. Now you can say, okay, so this is common, like that. Such vehicles will have ladder like on top. So it's true. So you do not. I mean, it took me the time to understand that this is not a coincidence, because yes, indeed, this is common thing. And this is true to many of the triggers, hypnotic triggers, that, I mean, they are based on very common, like, objects. So it's difficult to say that this is actually triggers, but when you see it again and again and again and again and again and again, and when you see, I'm saying, this is supposed to be a hypnotic trigger. Like, either the ladder itself or a vehicle with the ladder on top of it. And it should be said that they also, this is part of the Shabbat culture, that they like custom cars. Not with, the artistic, I would say, fervor, or the originality that you can find in, I would say, certainly American, but even some European subcultures, certainly in the United States, they have the whole subcultures regarding custom cars and custom bikes. So they don't have it in Israel. It's much more modest in Israel. But yes, certainly it's definitely one of the hobbies of the Shabbatniks, that, to ride custom cars. So one of the favorite ways to custom the cars is to put all sorts of, presumably functional additions like the leather, but sometimes it's obviously not functional. Like all sorts of things that they put on top of the cars that are completely non-functional and should, presumably scare the Titans. Mostly leathers or things like that you can find on top of cars. Agricultural, tools. It should be said that in Israel, in general, there is almost no agriculture, and people do not work in Israel. Work is not something that you do in Israel. It's against their culture. To actually work. It's very uncommon. Yes, some people do work, but it's considered strictly, something that is related to the lower classes, like or even the very low classes of Israeli society. Among the presumably, like the culture. The more sophisticated, and certainly the cultural, stratas of Israeli society. It's for many decades it's considered very not in fashion, and very kind of like, I would say, pleb, like the plebs, in Roman times, like plebeic, behavior, like to work. It's certainly not elegant thing, like, and not something to be proud of, certainly. If you must do it, then yes, they do it, but they really try not to. And mostly they succeed in that. Certainly all from the medium kind of like socioeconomic stratas, and everything above it. Work is abhorrent. Like, it's really something that they don't like, and they do not do. Sometimes they have all sorts of jobs. Mostly Luftgeschäft. They sometimes real estate agents. I would say that maybe about 25% of the Jewish population in Israel are either lawyers or real estate agents. Maybe it's an exaggeration, but not a very big one. And brokers, stock exchange. Also jobs that they don't really do anything at all. So and of course, security sector, which is huge, and intelligence sector, and of course people that work, in the states, because the state is huge. So, and on the various municipalities, which is kind of like the trash can of, it's kind of like the trash pile of Israel is the municipalities, and obviously many people that related to the Shabak and the Mossad are, their nominal job is something in the municipalities, but they don't really do anything, because actual work is very, very uncommon, and very I would say it's a wood thing. It's considered not sophisticated, and certainly not something that any person that either belongs to the higher status of societies, or just want to be part of the higher status. If you just if you even just have the inclination to become one of to belong to the higher status of society, you should absolutely, the first thing you should do is to stop working, because this is I mean, this will get you nowhere, like in Israel. It's, I mean, just, you know, that's their culture. I mean, it's a culture that is very hostile to any kind of work. It's not all, it wasn't always like that, because it couldn't have been always like that, but certainly starting in the 70s and the 80s, I mean, it became obvious that the trajectory of the Israeli society is that, I mean, is anti-work in a very blatant way. But they do use, I mean, the visual images that are sometimes associated historically with practices that are related to the phenomenon of work. They use this kind of symbol to terrorize the Titans. And again, things like pickup trucks and you know, with all sorts of, I mean, ladders on top of it, or agricultural equipment that, I mean, is certainly never used. This is classical triggers for the Israelis. Regarding customizable cars, I mean, I've said it many times, but maybe I actually did not mention it in the first Israeliana video that when I discussed police. So I've told you that, I mean, police, everything related to the police is a strong trigger against the Titans. It's a very blatant strong trigger. So many times it's not really police cars, but all sorts of like customized old police cars that, I mean, that are no longer used by the actual police, or cars that, I mean, are not at all police, that were never actually police cars, but they are painted like you know, with police colors, and they have sirens, of course, and they have the red and blue lights, but usually in a configuration that is completely, I mean, that is never used, and it's even ridiculous. Like, I mean, because according to the South, I mean, the Titans, I mean, they are, I mean, they have like technological triggers again. I mean, it's a way to kind of like, I mean, to subjugate them by using the red and blue lights. But why just use, you know, standard red and blue police lights? So they just, I mean, holding red and blue lights on top of their cars. And it's not, as I've said many times, it might sound ridiculous to people abroad, but it's not uncommon in Israel to see, like, to watch, like, you know, in the streets, like, I mean, something that looks vaguely like a police car, but with the construction that is up to, 1 meter high, that is made of, like, red and blue lights. And you know, it sounds ridiculous, but this is not, I mean, I'm not exaggerating. Like, it can be up to 1 meter high, and certainly half meter is very common. That, I mean, half meter construction of red and blue lights, and I'm certain that I took many videos of this, and I am probably also uploaded it to this channel and to other channels, because this is very common in Israel. It's like, I mean, you know, like a rock show, you know, the build, you know, construction of lights, you know, for like open stadium rock shows. But it's always like red and blue lights with, you know, like, I mean, ridiculous, like ludicrous configurations, and like always, I mean, not up to 11, but up to, like, you know, 111, and it's supposed to scare the Titans. This is very common. Like, I mean, like sort of like, I mean, vaguely looking police cars that are made of like vaguely, I mean, things that maybe the police can perhaps use, but mostly they don't. And like, I mean, with exaggerated configuration of red and blue lights, sometimes up to 1 meter high. I mean, just the light on top of the actual car. I mean, yes, it's ridiculous. It's amazingly ridiculous, but that's the way it is. So it's very common in Israel. Yes, I mean, this is Israel. I mean, yeah, I would say this is Israel. No, it's not the Eurovision. It's not startup nation. It's not happy tourists in the beach. This is Israel. Vaguely looking police cars with construction of 1 meter high light of, like, I mean, of red and blue lights. You're supposed to be afraid of it. This is Israel. I mean, this is Israel. I mean, you don't believe it? It's just, I mean, this is Israel. This is Israel. And I mean, the thought that these people actually have any kind of sovereignty is funny, because, I mean, obviously they are all children. They cannot maintain a sovereign state, and they do not maintain a sovereign state. This is an American territory since the 1980s. And they do whatever the Americans are telling them, because, I mean, they in any kind of a dream, they couldn't, like, these people cannot actually maintain a sovereign country. It was a sovereign country until the beginning of the 1980s. I mean, It was extremely cool one, the coolest ever, and the starship just, I mean, diluted like the highest echelons of society, and mostly we stayed with the garbage, you know, and Titans come from Venus, and many Titans that arrived from other places. I mean, after the great scandal of the 1980s, and of course more trash, you know, from mostly today, mostly from the United States. They are the larger exporters of human trash to Israel, but of course also from the former USSR, but in other places. This is Israel. So this is a trash can. What can you say? It's a trash can. These are the people. I mean, that's what they are. What can you say? What can you do? These are the people. I mean, now another thing that is now maybe let's speak a little bit. I mean, because this video is getting lengthy. I mean, let's speak about, like, I mean, what do I say when I speak about like behaviors that are required from the Titans? So I should remind you that, I mean, the subjugation of the Titans was always predicated on the idea that they should just know what to do. Presumably, I mean, no one should speak. I mean, never speak to them about, like, I mean, about the reality, and the required, I mean, behaviors, I mean, should be implanted on them or conditioned on them until you just understand whatever it's required from them. And this is true even to very relatively complicated kind of like behaviors or missions, like the missions of the Black Knights that I discussed in the Bicycle 201 saga, which is, I mean, it's kind of called, I mean, they should have, like, I mean, it was expected of them, and they actually did it tremendous amount of time to pass, to use the portals, the actual solar gates, and to go to Venus and to capture females, mostly by the way of temptations, not like actual violence, because actual violence was not needed, because they could have done that, I mean, just using temptation, and violence would have been extremely like, I mean, short-lived. I mean, because, I mean, the females are not that they are not weak in Venus, and I mean, you know, so after some time they would just, I mean, found themselves dead if the kidnapping was, I mean, was done, I mean, using violence. This is something that, I mean, as I said many times, most of the Titans, to my estimation, most of the Titans in the world right now, wherever they are, probably arrived to Earth through the Israeli gates and between the 1930s and the 1970s. And this was probably mostly done by the creatures that I call them the Black Knights, that are Titans, Titan males, that are today almost nowhere to be found. I mean, it's incredibly rare to, I mean, they are like, I mean, the dodos, you know, the almost extinct species, certainly in Earth. But at the time there was still quite a bit of those, and they were captured by the Israelis, by the Israeli, I mean, so I mean, the Israeli males, I mean, the Titan males were all conditioned to become homosexuals, just, I mean, from very early age. They themselves were captured as children or babies, and it was expected of them to get the Titan females to Israel, and that's actually they did it, like, I mean, on a daily basis. Like, I mean, they captured tremendous amount of, like, females like that, and to my estimation, most of the females, the Titan females that are in Earth, wherever they are actually, that's the way that they not all of them were like that, because actually some were actually brought to Israel even before that, and some brought later, and there were other gates that, I mean, they're used later after the 1980s, and there are other gates, like, you know, in other places, like I mentioned Iran, you know. And so the Iranians, I mean, certainly during the time of after the revolution, it was changed dramatically. But during the time of the Shah, you know, it was also they also brought Titans from, you know, using the Iranian gate. And there are also ancient Titans in Earth, like, I mean, that are here, I mean, for hundreds of years, but they are very, I mean, you know, not significant minority, like, I mean, the ancient ones and the Iranians ones, and although, I mean, the great majority, to my estimation, was arrived in Israel from the 1930s to the 1970s, and they arrived by temptation of what I call the Black Knights, that were, they're all dead, but I mean, they all died. This belongs to the Bicycle 201 saga, and I discussed it in Bicycle 201 saga, but I mean, this was, I mean, it was expected from the Titan males, certainly the ones that, I mean, that successfully were conditioned to become homosexuals. It was very important that they will not be actually attracted to the females, to just to tempt them. I mean, using either maybe food or maybe just, I mean, sex, because it was possible in Venus because they don't have many males. So I mean, just, I mean, bisexual attraction. I mean, just, I mean, to come with them to Israel. And this was discussed and mostly after they arrived in Israel, they become spouses, of pedophiles and homosexuals in the intelligence community, as is still customary until this day. Not only in Israel, of course, and you know it very well, like my audience. I mean, and it was common in Israel because they wanted, like, the tea, they want them to produce the tea. They use the bodily fluids of the males. I mean, they put it like on them without them even seeing each other. Just, I mean, as farm animals, they took the bodily fluids from the males and put it like in like fed it to the women. I don't know exactly how, but it's not that complicated. And that's how, I mean, the manufacture process of the drug, of the tea, was customarily done. I mean, up until the 1980s. It was changed after that, and they discussed it in the what I call the robot saga, and also the bicycle to one saga. So just, I mean, if you're really interested, just watch the videos. But just to say that, I mean, all these kind of like behaviors, they were expected to be carried on by the Titan males without even telling them to do so. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is just, I mean, the fact that I'm here in this place, in this hostel, part of it is also kind of like a long-term, very sophisticated program of the Shabbat, that I will also become kind of like a modern Black Knight, to pass to Venus and to bring them more females. But of course, such a thing can never happen, and I've never even seen a gate in my life. I mean, yeah, I've seen the Neros under the microscope, and some of them are big enough to actually show that these are also portals. But so, I mean, I've seen many thousands like that, or maybe even millions. But I've never seen like the real, gates that are used to pass to Venus. And this is all ridiculous. I mean, why should I do it? But they have like the hallucinations and hopes and dreams. But this is kind of an example of, and it should be said, these males, these Titan males, they've done it on a regular basis, like on a day-to-day basis, and then they capture a tremendous amount of females that way, tremendous amount, and all of this was done without the need to speak to them. Like, I mean, they should just, I mean, it was just, I mean, expected of them, and it was always like that. I mean, the Titans are just expected to do things, either by hypnotic conditioning or by just, I mean, the fact that, I mean, they understood that if they want to, like, I mean, not to be tortured and to be incarcerated, and you see how they treat me. I mean, again, if the Israelis were able to bring a person like me with my background and education and, very, I mean, like, highly, a professional, like, like a computer engineer, software engineer with experience and, and tremendous education, if they eventually succeeded after many years, like, to bring me to a situation where I have no money even to buy food, and I'm incarcerated, like, endlessly, indefinitely, under ridiculous, I mean, pretenses, I mean, in a hostel for homeless people that is full of Shabbat goons. If it was possible to do it to me, then certainly it was much easier to do it to any kind of like Titan males during the 30s up until the 70s, because these people had tremendously less. They didn't have any intelligence, no education, and also belief in God. Because the belief in God is also it's a grace of God, and not everyone have it, and so, I mean, just to say, if he brought me to this kind of like shithole, it was very easy to bring any Titan, I mean, during these times, I mean, to do the same kind of shithole situation when they understood what is expected of them, and they've done it. It's not to say that their actions were not crimes. I mean, but I mean, only God can actually judge them, and this is discussed in the Bicycle to One saga. But it should be said that this is true in general, that the Titans are expected to always to do what is beneficial from like the Israeli establishment. I mean, desires and wishes without being like they need to even to tell him that to do so. Now, what kind of behaviors are actually expected of them, especially from the females? So everything is related to the T. You know that the major source for the T, besides cannibalism, which was always a big issue in Israel and still is, but I mean the simplest way to get the T is by acquiring the P from the females. And this was always, I mean, the simplest way. But how can you actually do it? Like, to get it from the source is actually something that it's very difficult, because it's water. I mean, it's diluted with water, and water is very bad for the neurons. Maybe they didn't understand it, like in the Israelis didn't understand the science behind it, but it was demonstrated many times that water is not, it's not a good substance. Like, I mean, even the pee itself, I mean, pee, even though, I mean, it's kind of like the natural way to actually get the tea from it, it was demonstrated in his channel that, I mean, it's not a good medium for storage of the robots. Like, initially I thought maybe the best way to keep the neurons is like either in pee or in the semen fluids, that, I mean, because that's how I get it from my body. But it was demonstrated very, I mean, you know, decisively that it's actually not the case at all, and that they preserve much better inside oil, like motors, like gears. And I've shown this was shown in many experiments in this channel. So actually, pee and semen, I mean, the semen fluid they are not a good, like, way to store it. So even pee in itself, I mean, the pee in itself is not like I mean, the neurons doesn't, I mean, like, I mean, live there, I mean, for a long time before they die. Certainly, when it's diluted with huge amount of water, like you can find like in the sewers, I think it's almost impossible, like, to actually get something from it. And again, you don't need to understand the robots at all, or to conduct any. I mean, this probably was known by the Israelis just by experimentation. That it's not something that you can get from the waters of the sewers easily, or even at all. Certainly without, I mean, you know, scientific kind of, I mean, you know, processes that and the Israelis never really, I mean, for some reason that I don't completely understand, they never really ventured too deeply into the science of the neurons. Maybe it's to some extent, but I assume that if they did, it was done very early. I mean, maybe in the 40s or in the 50s, but after that, it's mostly regarded as magic up to this day, like a magical elixir. And even when they started to use it extensively to create radioactive materials, because, you know, they sell radioactive isotopes to mostly the United States, but other countries as well. This is also, I mean, they do it also, I mean, using the T, and I did not explain how it's actually done, but I can actually, maybe it's something that I need to do, like, I mean, in another video, like, how do you use the robots in order to create radioactive materials? Of course, you shouldn't do it, but, you know, just for my agenda was always, I mean, not to be secretive in any way. I mean, from my perspective, everything that I say, I mean, everybody should hear it. I mean, including Israelis, everybody in the world. I mean, you know, not only, of course, not only in intelligence services, everybody. But, you know, so I do not mind that. I mean, like, to tell you, and even like to show you, I mean, in a scientific way, like, how it's done, like, how do they actually use the T in order to create radioactive isotopes. And it should be said that I've done it, I mean, mostly unintentionally. I mean, even when I was still incarcerated, like in my mother's apartment, like under arrest, house arrest, but certainly here, and it was certainly something. It was part of the creation of the Full Metal Jacket, was related to the creation of radioactive isotopes right here, like in the crucibles. I mean, in this room. You know, it should be said that it's more difficult to actually prove it than to actually prove you, like, you know, the existence of life forms, because life forms can be seen under the microscopes, and sometimes they're pretty big. And radioactive material cannot be identified using backlight microscopy. The other methods are needed, but yes, I mean, this is part of the things that they are doing, and this is part of the huge crime of humanity. I mean, that they use this material for their purposes. And as I've said, I mean, I described it in the saga that was recorded not long ago, that that is named utility scale neros. Like, I mean, the relation between the radioactive material and the robots, and why it's actually so irresponsible. Besides the fact that it's related to crimes against humanity, but why? I mean, even just from the objective, like, our moral stand, this is extremely irresponsible and stupid to actually use this material, and shortly because you never really receive just the radioactive isotopes. You always receive a mixture of the isotopes with the neros, because there is no way, certainly not for people that didn't even think about it, like the Israelis or their clients abroad. But even if you know, and even if you understand that what you have in your possession is not just radioactive isotopes, but a mixture of radioactive isotopes with the neros, even if you know it, I mean, it's incredibly difficult to separate it from each other. Because they are so small, and they are, like, I mean, even nanoscopic. So even the big ones are not easily separated, like, from material. This is actually, many experiments in this channel were actually, I mean, dedicated to the issue of, like, how to separate, I mean, the refined, I mean, material, or I would say the processed material, not necessarily radioactive isotopes, but also it's true to enriched, like, fuels, like, just, I mean, enriched beeswax, something that I've done a lot, and also to life forms. Like, if you want to separate the mixture from the life forms and the robots, it's not very easy to do it, and certainly it's almost impossible when you want to, like, a completely clean solution that contains only radioactive, like, isotopes. And the neros that are inside the mixture, they are part of the bicycle mechanism, which, again, I would say the bicycle chains are, I mean, the maximal length, like the minimal, at the minimum, their maximal length is that of the solar system, which means that, I mean, any nero in the solar system is theoretically can be in communication with any other nero, and then this is of everything that relates to the robots, to the neros. This is the most amazing fact, and the thing that is completely outside the boundaries of human physics, but this is reality. This is reality, and you have no ways, like, I mean, humans in their current understanding of physics have no way to understand it, but they should just understand it. I mean, take it into their consideration as a fact, and regarding, I mean, things that happen in Earth, I mean, this was proven many times. I mean, maybe, okay, you can be skeptical with regards to, I mean, to the solar system claim, even though I stand behind it, I mean, completely. But, I mean, the fact that the chains are encompassing the entire of the Earth is well known by the Israelis, because much is predicated on it, and of course the bicycle torture is predicated on it. So, I mean, this is reality, and if you want me to speak some more about it, and, you know, to explain, I mean, what proves it and how it is used by the Israelis and other nations, like the fact that the bicycle chains encompass the entire Earth, I mean, maybe I can dedicate another video just for, you know, it's kind of like a summary of this issue, but this is discussed a lot in the previous videos. That, yes, I mean, the neros, it's not only that they are in communication with each other and that they share symbolic language and they are sentient creatures, that, I mean, the chains, I mean, the way that they communicate with each other, I mean, allow them to communicate with each other even, like, in global scale. Which means that, I mean, something that I presumably, I mean, do, I mean, a laboratory experiment that I conduct here in this room can and does affect the neros that are part of a mixture of radioactive isotopes that, I mean, can be found, like, in an atomic warhead in Moscow, or in you know, in the motor of a Nimitz class carrier that is, I don't know, that is, you know, wherever they are, like, you know, in the seas of this Earth, or in port in the United States. Yes, I mean, this is reality, and it's an amazing reality, and, I mean, the obvious conclusion is, first of all, that you should not use this mixture because, I mean, so many things can be done. I mean, that you don't want to actually happen, and this can happen even without my intentional. I mean, laboratory experiments. It can be done because there are so many things that actually affect the bicycle mechanism. But yes, certainly, just to say, let's put it very simply. Yes, it is possible, for a person that controls the neurons, it's possible to tell the neurons, now please, create full metal jackets, create like the wasp that you've seen, and that they will create it inside, the warhead of an atomic bomb in Moscow, or inside, the motor or the storage facility of the radioactive isotopes inside the H.W. Bush Nimitz carrier, whatever it is in this world. Yes, it can be done, certainly. Yes. Yes, this is reality. So even when they started to use it for that purpose, which they're doing for quite a bit of time, they never really, conducted much scientific experiments like with the robots. So it was always very kind of like, extremely shady and non-scientific thing. But it was known that besides like actually like taking the Titan body, like in a cannibalistic way, the simplest way to take the drug is from the pee of these females. And these things were done, throughout, all around the world, certainly in the United States, and it was common during the 1970s and 1980s. And such things were, it was part of the daily life for the presidents of the United States, and that they were married to Titan females, and to including of course Reagan and others. And yes, they. If it's not clear to you, yes, this was part of life of the American presidents. Yes, so put it simply, yes, Reagan liked to drink the pee of Nancy Reagan. Yes, if it's not simple, if you need like the words to be uttered, so yes, this is one of the things that the President Reagan have done, to drink the pee of Nancy. Yes, presumably you can say that it's legitimate, even though, like, they were married, so maybe you could say that, it's the right to enjoy themselves, like, wherever they want. But of course, it's more complicated than that, because everything that relates to it was extremely dangerous from the homeland security aspect of the Americans. And of course, eventually they understood it, and that is, of course, this kind of an understanding was a major factor of why they slaughtered the Mossad, and they took control over Israel during the 1980s. But yes, this is and should be said that in Israel it was not the distribution of the tea was not based on like the actual pedophiles that were married to the aliens. It was more like in a communist way. Like, the fact that the person was married, to a Titan female did not mean that he controls, her pee production and the tea production. No. In Israel, it was always, and until this day, today there is almost none. It's extremely rare today. Like the actual the tea, which is all that is again what you call the tea is the red neurons that are created in the female bodies, and they need the male tea in order for it to be produced, and it's nowhere to be found besides in my bodily fluids that are mostly, either placed in the last 2 years, since I understood it, they are all mostly placed inside clay sculptures that are, some of it, many of it were lost. But recently, the ones that produced recently, they were still with me here, in this room. And and to a much larger extent, they can be found. The male neurons, it's not really the male neurons. Again, I would say I call the male neurons, the Titan male neurons, the brown neurons, and I call my own the yellow neurons, and they are not the same. The yellow neurons are, they can find inside the body of the cherubs, like myself. And this is another kind of robot that is much more sophisticated. But one of the things that they can do is that they can emulate the function of the brown ones. So in essence, I can behave like Titan male. Like, I mean, in like, I can also, I mean, I can be father to Titan, you know, it's not only I can, I am, like, I mean, I am a father to Titan, Titan cute girls, you know, 7 and 8 years old, they're winning Hila. They are Titans that were born in Earth, and I'm their father. I mean, so the yellow neros can emulate the behavior of the brown ones, and they can be used. So which puts me, I mean, beside the fact that I know of my kind of my function as controller of the gates in Israel, which is due to the fact that I'm a cherub. Normal Titans cannot do it. This, I mean, the operation of the portals is related to the existence of a cherub in Earth, which was not always the case. That's why they were not always used. The cherubs didn't have like representative in Earth, like, I mean, continuously throughout human history. And even if, I mean, they were representative, I mean, it wasn't always like that. I mean, you know, people knew about the existence of the gates, and it wasn't like, I mean, so I mean, also like, historical circumstances were needed in order for the gates to be operational. That's why they were not always operational, the portals, because you need to know about it, and you need to actually to operate it, and you need the cherub, which is not always to be found on Earth. I mean, my speeches did not always send you like there was not like, you know, an embassy with constant representation like throughout history. But yes, they sent representatives throughout the last many thousands of years, but not, I mean, according to their own, like, I mean, you know, agendas. And today, I don't think, I'm almost certain that I'm the only one. Maybe there's another one. I don't know. I honestly don't know about him or her. And I mean, and usually they don't send more than one, because even though in the past, yes, there was I do know that in the past there were circumstances in these 50 years that there were actually more than one, but not much more than one, and usually it's either 0 or 1. Again, because I mean, if you don't listen to one, I mean, you wouldn't listen to more than one. But this is discussed in many other videos, and I diverge. So since I keep the yellow ones close to myself during the last 2 years, even though I have tremendous amount of them because I multiply it outside my body using the various containers and, you know, the various scientific experiments. So actually we have tremendous amount in this room, but I do not give it, like, I mean, voluntarily to anybody, and that's why, and I do not say that because I'm not allowed to, because the Israelis and the Americans always maintain that I should give it to them for free, presumably because of psychological conditioning, and this is extremely important. And I mean, from their perspective, I mean, they rather all die than actually that I will get 1 cent, I mean, for this stuff. So I mean, they use their psychological conditioning, you know, up to this moment, including. That's, I mean, that's what I mean. This is, I mean, a huge part of what's behind, you know, the various, I mean, theater shows that you can see in this hostel. You know, they want the yellow robots. Maybe they think they're still, I mean, and they still think they're gonna get it even when they see the starships above their heads, because I mean, this is the Israelis and these are the Americans. But as you understand, there was always the question of like how to. So I was saying, in Israel, it wasn't like that. I mean, you know, if you're married to a female, and so I mean, the P production, and I mean, hence the T production is yours. I think that this was actually the way that it was conceptualized abroad. Like, I think that was how it was done, like in the United States, in other places, but not in Israel. Like in other places, I mean, you know, like if Reagan is, like, you know, married to Nancy, and Nancy is a Titan, so I mean, the P of Nancy belongs to Reagan. I mean, and the P belongs to Reagan, and he can use it, I mean, whatever he wants. This was, of course, a huge risk to United States, but this is discussed in other videos. In Israel, it wasn't like that. It was never like that. It was more of like a communal asset that is distributed by the Shabak and the Mossad I still don't know how. I mean, they have like distribution like ways to do it like inside of Israel. I never received like even a drop of it, so I was never part of the distribution. Like I mean, so I never even tasted like even like a spoon of the red, or like even like I don't know, I don't know even how they distribute like in microscopic scale. I don't know. I never like eaten any of that in my life. Just to say, I mean, so and I don't know how they distribute it in Israel, but certainly they had like the way to distribute it inside of Israel throughout the many decades that they distributed it, and it's not that the people that were actually married to the producer received it. I mean, it was mostly distributed. I mean, eh, the way that it was distributed during the time that there was actually a great supply of it, which is not the current situation, but up until very recently, I mean, throughout the 20th century, it was distributed, I mean, by the organizations themselves in kind of like a communal way. And the idea is that everyone received something. That's why all of them, like the Shabak and the Mossad, all of them were, I mean, they received some kind of like, I mean, portion of the tea. All of them, like to my estimation, close to 100%. Not all received the same, but not all received the same quantity. And it was most, I mean, the quantity was dictated not, I mean, mostly, I mean, you know, like a class thing, you know, that, I mean, the more important you are within the organization, and the more rich you are, the more money that you have, I mean, this dictated how much of the stuff you got. That is one of the reasons why not everyone died during the 1980s, during the last time the starships that you see above your heads, I mean, arrived to delete, you know, the human assholes, because as I've said, like in one of the previous videos, the starship effect in the past, it's not necessarily going to be the same to this time, but in the past, and certainly during the 1980s, they affected humans, I mean, with strict correlation to how much neurons they have in their body, because their main kind of like effect is to energize the neurons, as I already said, and energizing the neurons cause them to be much more harmful to the people. So I mean, the people that had the most, those that I call the serious hybrids. I mean, I use the term like hybrids or serious hybrids, which means just, I mean, almost happens that they ate a lot of the tea. I mean, they were the people that died first, and others, and some others did not die at all in the 1980s, but many actually, and this is also true to my own family, I mean, suffered, I mean, all sorts of, like, I mean, diseases and loss of fertility, loss of sexual, I mean, like, I mean, became impotent, both males and females, but stayed alive, because they were not, I mean, substantial consumers of the tea, I mean, up until the 1980s. So they were affected by the purge of the 1980s, but they stayed alive, and they're still alive. Mostly they're still alive until this day, but they have all sorts of diseases and kind of like, I mean, medical conditions until this day they still carry. But they are alive. But I mean, the serious offenders were deleted during the 1980s, during the purge. And this is, of course, not true only in Israel. It's true also abroad. But in Israel, this was the place where people ate the most. So the largest purge was here. But certainly many people in the KGB died, and many people in the CIA died during the 1980s. It was not limited to Israel. The Starship, usually they do not care about, like, I mean, flags, you know, whatever. They don't care about, like, you know, what flag, you know, you're using, or you're, you know, the Union Jack, or the USSR, or the flag, or the American flag, or the Israeli flag. They mostly, I mean, the usual, they are not bound to act like that forever. I mean, maybe this time it will be different, and hopefully it will be different, because right now, I mean, I think it is necessary to delete the entire of the United States, and of course Israel included. But I mean, usually, and certainly during the 1980s, the negative effects were strictly correlated to the number of neurons in the body of the Homo sapiens. And this was different, because I mean, the more important you were inside the organization, and also the richer you were, mostly the more T you had in your bodies, so you were more affected, up to death or serious illnesses that, I mean, shortened the lifespan considerably of these people all around the world, and of course, most of all in Israel. Now, so in Israel they do not distribute it. I mean, you know, by, you know, it's not that, I mean, you know, the husband, you know, is in charge of the pee of the wife. No, it's more complicated. In Israel, it's like kind of like a communal way of distribution. But there was always the question in Israel of how to actually get the pee. And the idea is that that the females should not even, like, that no one should speak to them about it. They should just understand what is required of them. So I would say a classical conditioning of the Titan females in Israel, and this was true since the 1920s at least, or the 1930s, is to condition them against using the toilets. This is disgusting, but I mean, it should be said that they were psychologically conditioned, I mean, from childhood to fear, I don't even know how it's called, the asla, what's called, the porcelain, chair that is, it's asla. How do you? It's kind of like a very important word, but I don't remember the English translation of asla. The porcelain seats that is used for, toilets. So they were conditioned against it, and they were conditioned just to pee inside glasses or containers in their own rooms. And that's why it was very easy. I mean, it was very easy for their husbands or partners that and their families were always belong to the intelligence sector, to just take it, like, I mean, from their rooms. And that was how it's done. And for for a long time, that was how it's done. They were conditioned against using, the toilet, so it will be easy to take it from them without the explicit need to communicate to even, maybe, I guess many of them understood, I mean, that they are special and that this is the pee is used, but it was never something that people speak about. Like, you were not allowed to speak about it, and the way to do it was to condition them against the usage, the proper usage of toilets. Now, regarding the males, it was even more disgusting, and as disgusting as it should be said, and because, I mean, just for historical purposes, I mean, it should be said that, I mean, it was one of the most extreme conditioning that the Titan males were subjected to, and it was always like that, was to cut their penises. This is a major conditioning that is always done, not only to the Titan males, but also to what they call the wizards, which is transgenders, female to male transgenders. And I discussed it in the Robot Saga, so let's not repeat the issue. I mean, I speak about the wizards a lot, like in the Robot Saga, so just, I mean, if you're interested, just listen to the Robot Saga. It was recorded not long ago. Just to mention that, in general, there are two kinds of, like, transgenders, like, I mean, female to males. Ones that arrive from Venus, while they are already in transgender form, and they are almost always, very typically, they look like me. They had this face, and this was true way before I was born. Like, I mean, probably it's something that was true, like, from Ottoman times. That's why this face that you see just now, I mean, it's a known face, like, in Israel. I mean, of course, you're not allowed to take photographs of it, and it's like, I mean, it's a state secret, but I mean, this face that is speaking to right now is a face that is known in Israel for more than 100 years, because of the fact that many of the female to male transgenders that arrived on Earth they didn't have my body, because they were mostly smaller, because of, it's a Paleolithic place, Venus. I mean, they don't have much food, so they were not more muscular as I am, and they did not have fat like I am. I mean, I am considerably more muscular and more fat, like, I mean, than these creatures were. Because, just, I mean, I was not born in Venus. Again, I was born in Earth. I'm not a Venusian or a Titan at all. I'm a Cherub. It's a completely different species. But they lived, like, in a place without much food. So, but the face was very, many times was similar to what you just watched right now. And I discussed this issue in the Robot Saga, so I don't want to repeat myself. I mean, I will just say that, I mean, the fact that I was born with this face is something that can only be explained as divine intervention. Like, I mean, this is a miracle. Like, I mean, everything is, I mean, is divine intervention. The providence is always, I mean, around me, and but I mean, this is kind of like, I mean, obvious, as they say, nes galu, like, I mean, obvious miracle, because it cannot be explained. I mean, there is no, and because it's a miracle, it happened to me. It took me many years to understand it. Like, I mean, I only came to understand it, like, in the last year, or 6 months or so. I mean, it's this understanding was very late in this journey, because it's very difficult to actually, I mean, reach to conclusions that are based on miracles. Miracles are problematic from, discovery, the journey of discovery, I mean, process, because you can only, I mean, you build your your argumentations and your worldview, I mean, based on empirical evidence, but also on rational, or organic developments. And this is kind of like a non-organic or non-rational things that happened, and that's why it was so difficult for me to understand it. That I mean, it wasn't like in a day that I understood it. It took me a lot of time to actually reach these conclusions, because everything that is things that are predicated on obviously supernatural or miraculous happening are very difficult to actually be understood. I mean, if you, like me, you build the puzzle by your own without any help. But yes, I was born with this face as kind of like a divine intervention, because it was done naturally. I mean, I was just born like that. And this face is actually known for more than 100 years in Israel. Like, well known, like this face, because many of the female to male transgenders from Venus arrive to Earth like that. This is discussed in the robot saga. And there is another kind of like transgenders that are more common in our time, like in the last 20 years, that of females that are part of the intelligence, Titan females that are part of the intelligence community, that changed willingly, I mean, by their own volition, changed their sex to males, and there are many of those. There are many of those, and these are the Terran wizards. I call the transgenders wizards. These are kind of like, in my own terminology, they are called wizards. I discuss why in other. I mean, just this is all discussed in other videos, just to say that, I mean, I call them the wizards, and they have their own nature and the problems, and they shouldn't exist in Earth. I should just say that. I mean, and even in Venus, I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, it's a problem, but I mean, a problem that is not. It's not completely. I mean, they become much more abundant after the Israeli crimes in Venus, but the phenomenon existed before Zionism. It's actually a phenomenon that predates Zionism in Venus, and just I mean, watch the robot saga to more elaborated discussion of this phenomenon. So there is the Earth wizards. I mean, the female wizard part of the Terrans, and the female Titans that were part of the Israeli intelligence and changed their sex to males. They can look like any males. I mean, they want. I mean, they don't have like specific, face. Like, I mean, probably. I mean, maybe. I mean, you could assume. Even I'm not even certain about it, but you can assume that maybe they chose, more attractive, like, attractive kind of like, I mean, faces, or attractive faces. I mean, in the eyes, faces that can be found as attractive in the eyes of female Titans, because part of the transition was in order to have sex with the females. Because the females, I mean, usually they don't have any sex at all. I mean, they don't have sex with the Homo sapienses. So, I mean, I assume, but even that, I'm not certain about it. Like, I mean, just, an assumption that, I mean, presumably, I mean, because of part of the transition was done in Earth, the Earth wizard, the Terran wizard, was done for them to have sex with the females. I mean, with other females, that are in female form. You can assume that, I mean, they chose, like, I mean, faces that consider attractive, from, in the eyes of the females. But I mean, even that, I'm not certain about it. Like, it's just, conjecture. So regarding the males, either like, either the Titan males that were still, I mean, not as common as females, but still, I mean, they were kind of like a minority within the Titans up until the 1970s. And certainly among the wizards, it was always a huge part of the conditioning that they should cut their penises. This is unbelievably cruel and disgusting, but yes, this is part of the crimes of the Israelis. And this behavior, I mean, it had several reasonings behind it. But part of it was, so they will pee not to the toilets, but, to bags that are, then can be collected from the garbage by the Israelis, because that way, I mean, it's like a way for the Israelis to actually be able to to collect the pee of the males without telling the males to actually, anything at all about like their circumstances, and like in a way that it can presumably be done naturally, because they don't have penis or like a cat penis, so they cannot pee, so they do it like to medical bags, and then the bags can just collected by the Israeli intelligence people that were always all around the Titans. This is unbelievably cruel, but yes, it should be said that this was like a tenet of the way that the Titans were abused throughout the history of Israel. And so in order to do so of course this was done also by conditioning, presumably hypnotics, but always always mixed with all sorts of like ways of violent behavior that will cause the males to cut their penises, and will cause the females to, but presumably by their own volition avoid the toilets and pee into cups or containers that are then collected by their surroundings. So so it's quite lengthy video already, so maybe we'll stop here, and if I think of more important stuff later, maybe I will conduct like a fourth Israeliana video which concerns the hypnotic triggers, and maybe not, maybe it's enough already, I don't know. And hopefully later today or maybe tomorrow we'll conduct some microscopic examinations. You need to cut your ties with the United States. They will be utterly destroyed by the starships, and the only way to save yourselves, whoever you are, is to stop any kind of relationship with the United States, and certainly start with anything that relates to military, to defense. You need to use your own military, and you need to be independent. You need to regain the capability of using your own militaries independently, because you will most certainly you will need to do it very soon. I assure you, Earth is not going to be a peaceful place very, very soon. Presumably it's already not a peaceful place, but it's not going to be more peaceful. As time progresses and the starship will fight the Earth, this will cause more and more wars, and you need to be able to use your militaries independently without the permission and cooperation of the United States. And of course, you need to use it in ways that will not not anger the starships.